beginning of the 660 turn in the negotiations. I don't always handle negotiations this detail in games that I handle, but because this really is a diplomacy game, I wanted to do it this way. The negotiations kind of still stalled. Avars and Persians couldn't come to a decision. Neither one would commit. And they're like, fine. Rome, not thrilled about this. Other sides, well, they're happy to hear, actually. Except for the Byzantines, who would kind of like to see that fight begin, because otherwise they don't think they have a chance at all. But we'll see. Onward. But with all the hemming and hawing, it looks like some action's actually been taken. The Mazdians and the shamans walked into Finland. No coordination there. And we see the shamans making kind of an overall religious assault, at least, on areas within the Viking pagan world. Also seeing the Mazdians kind of inflicting themselves a little bit on Islam. They're not probably hitting Islam there. They're probably hitting the monotheists, or the monophysites, but that's going to interfere and cause problems, and I think it's going to wipe it out and prevent anything from happening. It's kind of a twisted little occurrences going on everywhere. Alright, well, let's resolve the religious conflict, and then also take advantage of whatever conversions take place. Well, another big milestone after handling those out, the Mazdians have picked up, like the Vikings have, an extra holy war. Monophysites there. And as usual, Mazdians and Islam are kind of pushing the Jews back and forth at each other. There's a lot of tension kind of growing between that and what happened down in Cyrenaica. Things aren't too happy there, but on the other hand, the shamans moved heavily into the Vikings. The Mazdians did not. And that also is kind of providing tension on that side. So at this point, the Persians are kind of worried that they're pissing off all their neighbors, and they're going to have to be careful about that. Meanwhile, we saw something of a resurgence of the Catholics. I'm not sure. They may have just kind of broken even. It doesn't look like they moved much. The Vikings definitely lost a significant chunk, though. A few population, which is going to be kind of painful for them. Saw some conflicts actually between the Arabs and the shaman down here, with the Arabs remaining. That's how they gained that. So they have kind of this foothold that they're going to try to expand into that Roman Catholic territory. I think there's a good chance that they may end up semi-allied with the Vikings. They're at the same level as the Vikings are, and they kind of feel like they want to push themselves into an anti-Persian state. The problem is they don't really have their forces arrayed that way. They may want to pull something back in order to take advantage of that. We'll see how that works out in the end. A lot of the little religions dying out. The Manichaeans here down to 1. Nestorians down to 1 up there. I didn't catch the Manichaeans. Which may mean there may be an Islam behind. Anyway, on to the military. Okay, well, let's see what the military reactions are here. Vikings sail down. A bunch of Islam sliding its way into really Western Africa, which is dangerous because we've got some movement going on here onto their border. These mutually supporting just so that, I don't know, no real great reason there. Sailing out here, this is really beginning to look like a threat on Islam. Not a wholehearted one, mind you, but the movements are all of that flavor. Now here we have something interesting. The Vikings were sliding down to Nuestria, but we have Franks moving in with support. So actually, these Vikings move out to sea, but the Franks have taken this, and we've got no movement there. At the same time, we see the Avars positioning. Wow, did I screw up? Looks like I may have. Pologna, no, Pologna was supporting Pannonia, so they're staying there. Sailing out here, definitely positioning themselves to be a significant threat. Got mutual support here. We've got Vikings sliding up here, where they may be less useful because the Persians may actually end up willing to make a deal. But the big story of the day is this is the end of the Byzantines. This came in with 2 support. It's got nowhere to retreat. Their army is gone. They still exist in Constantinople, but at the end of next turn, the adjustment phase, that's going to fall, and they will stop being a player. Now, if they had minor countries, it's not clear what would happen in their case. We have to put the priests down at this point, and we also have to look at a couple of these predictions, which was that there was going to be, again, a schism here, and to tell you the truth, it's there. Should have been there already, I think, last time because of this. I don't think that changed this time. But 2 people have predicted it: the Persians, Mazdians, and the Avar. And the Arab Islam. So I'm going to just roll a die. Odd, it's going to be the Persians. Even, it's going to be the Arabs, and it's a big bonus if it's the Persians. And they get it. Now, why is this not connected? So this is connected to Egypt, but there's no connection through to Libya. And that's where the problem is. There's no way to hook that up. Anyway, it should have happened last time. It didn't. It happened this time. And what did I say? I said the Persian Mazdians get to pick one. So they get to pick a religion, which is going to be kind of a heretic religion. And we'll give them the iconoclast, because at least they were an Eastern Orthodox-based group. And that drops the monophysites down to 1, which makes them almost useless. Not that anybody really controls them. And the iconoclasts up to 3. And the iconoclasts are now going to be run as a minor by the Mazdian Persians. And that's going to be a significant, perhaps, bonus and influence on whether or not they're going to hit Islam. Alright, let's give them that control. A few slight modifications. Got a couple of the points wrong. Forgot a donation unit that was up there, or whatever. You know, here's one of the things. This is a game where you're unlikely to keep the records perfect. In diplomacy, things are almost always perfect. A screw-up's a big deal. In this, man, you're just not going to be able to keep track of this if you're anything like me. You'd have to be very, very careful. If the game could be put on a computer, it would probably be easier to track. It's just, there's something very, very, in the term that people like to use for this, fiddly, about all of these counters for the religious side. That would be much easier handled. It's such a simple, clean game in so many ways. It would be actually really a perfect game to be translated onto the computer, because it is very simple, very easily playable. It's just the record keeping involved in the religious issues is just painful. All right, well, that is the end, I believe, of the 660 turn. So we go on to 670, and I still got 40 minutes to write orders before I got to go to work. Damn construction woke me up today, along with the light and everything. All right. Okay, so here in the 670 turn, positioned the religious actions. Haven't resolved them yet. What we see, obviously, the ongoing Viking Catholic War. Arabs continuing to push forward, putting some defenses up just in case the Mazdians move forward. No stab there, though. Really, this intensified tremendously. The shamans and the pagans attacking one another. Avars, Vikings. But what looks like a major stab across the line. Over here, and then over here, is the Mazdians moving into the shamanistic territory. It's as though, it really looks as though there's been a Viking Persian agreement to destroy the Avars at this point. We'll see how that works out. We've got the last remains, but they're going to disappear very quickly. Now here's the thing. The way the rules are written, if the Byzantines disappear, Orthodox, and for that matter, if there's a monophysite up there, aren't like minor religions. They're just doomed. They just sit there and wait to be attacked as though they were animists. I don't like that. I think what makes the most sense, the Byzantines obviously wouldn't still play them. There's no value to it. They can leave, they can go home, whatever. But it doesn't seem unreasonable that they can't assign them to someone that they kind of felt didn't hurt them too much in the game. And I think keeping them alive as a minor religion under those circumstances would actually make for a little more interest. So I'm going to make that little modification. All right, on to the religious conflicts. And now, after these stabs, we're seeing what amounts to the fall of the minor religions for the most part. The iconoclasts down to one. What else here? We had a couple just driven away completely. The Nestorians, the Manichaeans, the Donatians, down to just two, kind of separated, hard to find. Of course, the Monophysites have been sitting at one. We're also likely to see the end of Orthodoxy as a player, but the religion is still kind of spreading, going on with the Patriarch fleeing up to Dacia and, you know, establishing things there to improve their situation. Jews still getting pushed around, of course. What can you expect? We've got kind of this thing with Syria and Palestine where both sides are trying to shove the Jews at the other person, and you know, it's just coming out to be a null effect. But it's more painful for the Mazdians because they've already got to up in Syria. They can't afford to lose it, though, because if they gain, you know, if it goes to a 3 Jewish area, then, well, I guess it doesn't really make too much of a difference. 2, 3, still under their control. They've got an army sitting there, but it's not, and it's not a city, so it's not really, it doesn't matter that it's loyal or not. Unlike Palestine, which has a city, and it is important to try to make loyal, but it is weakening the Arab position. The fact that the iconoclasts, though, are getting driven away is strengthening their hand. They were very worried about a Mazdian attack, although it wouldn't be a major one. It wouldn't be massive. But you're not seeing that happening. All right, I guess it's on to the military. And here we are on the 670 military turn. Remember, this is one that counts. See a bounce here in Mauritania, but the Islamists have enough control that they knock the Vikings out of there and are going to take Mauritania. On the other hand, all their other forces turned around and marched back. The threat of Persia was just too great that they ended up supporting the Avar fleet here, which is was something that was useful for them. They had double support, thereby blocking this attack from Cappadocia that was happening. What we do see, though, is the Persians sliding in the territories on their stab of the Avars. And then we also have the Avars and the Vikings fighting. And here we have this hit. This prevents a support here. Got two support in one support in Australia. That's not going to be dislodged. So the Avars do not gain any ground there. But they do manage to take Sweden, of all things. Which is, of course, the religious center for the Vikings. Up here, the Franks didn't leave Neustria. However, the Vikings have the advantage there, so they're going to get knocked out. I'm not sure where they're going to retreat to, but this Frankish army made it to Lombardy. The Vikings didn't take advantage and attack Burgundy. So, really, there's a lot of places I could drop the Franks from here. Part of me wants to kind of go there and cause a problem, but that's too likely to get popped. Although it would open up Britain. I'm just going to fall back to the safer location back here and hope I can get an extra army in Burgundy. I should be able to get one because I'm taking Milan now. Anyway, I'll come back after the builds are completed, I guess. So after the placement of the military units as well as the priests, etc., this is our situation. You know, we see things like the Avar having taken Sweden there. Some of these kind of remainder type things. Now there's an argument that goes that the Monophysites, or at least the Monothelist, is sort of the basis of the original Marian church. I know that the Marians themselves don't accept that now, but it's kind of an interesting just kind of follow-up there. Breaking away from the Eastern Orthodox. It gives an explanation of why they were willing to seek the Catholic side of things, even though the Catholics and the Eastern Orthodox both held the same view towards the Monophysite and actually the Monothelist views, which is that they were unacceptable. We have Orthodox priests showing up in Daci, and let's see. Things are kind of weird at this point, which is, you know, there's almost this, the Vikings saying, look, get out of Sweden, get out of my stuff, you can fight the Mazdians all by yourself, I'll continue fighting the Catholics, we'll be good, right? Because right now, actually, the Vikings have fallen quite far behind both the Mazdians and Islam. And the Avars are considering that because fighting two fronts doesn't make a lot of sense. Of course, they have to give up Sweden for that. And that's kind of their gain from all of this. Overall, I think they actually gained a thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4. 7. Yeah, they're good. If they can turn the tide there, maybe cut a deal with Islam, and Islam probably is kind of agreeable with everyone at this point. They feel like Persia's really their big threat. They don't have a threat coming from the north, so it's quite possible that we could see an alliance here. The Vikings kind of say, hey, get out of Sweden, we're in good shape, and actually maybe even pushing down into Volga or something against the Mazdians. The feeling here, of course, is that the Persians have been somewhat duplicitous and no one really greatly trusts them at this point. Of course, you could sort of say the same about the Avar, but I feel like their alliance with the Vikings had kind of trickled down. There was no big stab there, whereas there definitely is one elsewhere. Like I said, though, I handed off the Orthodox, and that's why they still have priests, over to the Vikings. And I handed off the Monophysites, I believe, to the Catholics. They're not very valuable right now. I'm going to load this one up, and we're moving to the 680 turn.